welcome to a very special episode of Unfinished Business Television. I'm your host, Jeff Galashaw, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Andre Joseph of AJ Epics Productions.
Good morning, Vietnam.
And you might notice we have a guest with us this week. We have a very special guest, legendary screenwriter, director, producer, Mr. Steven Souza. Thank you for being here.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
First off, before the interview, gotta praise you because I am just in awe that you're on our show here because as a kid growing up, I watched a lot of movies and I would stay through the credits, and a lot of those films, not to age you, I would look to see who it was written by, and you were one of the first screenwriters' names who I remember and remember their work. And then also, I would read movie magazines like Premiere, Entertainment Weekly, Movie Line, and you were always either being mentioned or interviewed. So, just having you here is just like so amazing right now.
Well, I'm delighted to be here, and it's kind of sad that your life was so empty that you look to me for entertainment.
I had many places, but I chose you.
All right. There were some other fun things you did you haven't mentioned. Okay, all right.
Okay. I never learned to ride a bike, but I used to play tag a lot.
Oh, get out! No, really, I run into people sometimes that say I never learned to ride a bike, and I just don't understand. I've actually seen. It's hard to believe, I guess, because of during COVID and stuff. But I've actually seen. You know how people put a sign on a telephone pole and you can tear things off. But I've actually seen bike riding lessons, and it says, "Are you embarrassed or ashamed?" Never like, well, call this number. Because people are like, during COVID and stuff and the lockdown, we're, getting all the bicycles and stuff. But it's as easy as riding a bicycle. It's not too late to learn.
That's true. If I would have seen one of those, I would have tried it myself.
Well, when you say not to age you, I got used to a while of going to meetings. The executives get younger and younger when you have at the studios and stuff like that. So I got used to where I go to a meeting and somebody would say, "Oh, you did Knight Rider? Oh, I had the toys." I go, "Oh, okay, right." But I've actually been to meetings now where someone says, "Oh, Knight Rider, I had the Underoos." So now it's getting like oh, okay, I'm getting down to the Underoos. I'm waiting, they should bring those back, because as you get older, you end up in diapers, and the fan base is getting older. You go to Comic-Con, you see people my age and attending Comic-Con. So I think they should bring back Underoos for seniors, in the Depend sizes. I think it could be very big.
Hey, there, see, you already just pitched a business idea right there.
All right, you guys talk to your relatives. We'll get the seed money.
Andre, you can start off.
So I guess always the question we ask every filmmaker that comes on, what got you started in the business?
Oh, you'll be sorry you asked that question. Take you back to the ancient past. If you asked me when I was a kid, I thought I was going to be a cartoonist. When I was a kid, I used to one of these kids used to make my own comic books. Used to draw them and staple them together, and I was always, in the school plays and the typical like nerd, no football team, the typical nerd, school resume, the school plays and the school newspaper and the audiovisual squad. I don't know if you still have that, but they'd roll the television, from room to room on a thing. But I was probably like precociously creative. I used to like organize, other kids put on plays and things. I got into trouble a couple times. I remember one time we had teachers said, "Listen, we're doing this was, I guess it was like 6th grade or something. We're doing a combination English art project. I want you to write and illustrate your own version of a famous fairy tale." So I did mine. The teacher got, A little while later, somebody comes down. It would go up to the principal's office. I go to the principal's office, and the principal's there, and the guidance counselor. and we said we'd call your parents to come in about this disturbing, thing you've written. And I basically wrote Goldilocks and the Three Bears as kind of a film noir, a detective thing, where she knocked on my door. He was a detective in fairyland, and I illustrated it with like a girl falling out of her blouse, and the crime bear, Papa Bear, Baby Bear, and Mama Bear. Those are like crime names. They have like Rudolph, Knuckles, Georgiano. They always have nicknames. So my parents had to explain that he's very creative. I know he's throwing guns and half naked women, but he's okay, and then I guess my senior year of high school, I got published. I was, I fancied myself a writer. I was, very sending things off to magazines when I was 12 years old. I have a collection of rejection letters, but I finally got accepted by a magazine called Rogue, which is out of print now, but at that time was trying to compete with Playboy and Esquire. So it was a men's magazine, and it had, fold out pictures, but it had legitimate literary pieces. So I was very thrilled. I wrote a funny piece about movies, basically about movie cliches. So I brought it to school. So at one point, I guess it was, I don't know what it was, the homeroom teacher says, "What are you passing around back there? Bring that up here." "Well, Mr. Souza, we frown on pornography in this school. You are going up to the principal." I go, "Well, it's not pornography. The Supreme Court, just get up to the principal's office." So they go, "All right, we've called your parents. Your father said he's in the meeting, going to try and come. What were you thinking of? Why would you bring something like this? How did the story even sell it to you?" And I go, "No, they sent me a free copy." "What do you mean, who?" "The publisher. I have a story in there, an article." "Get out of here." "No, really, it's behind the paper, behind the fold out." So the guidance counselor opens it up and goes, "Son of a bitch, that's your name there. What did they pay you for that?" $75. "Wow, that's great." "Well, no kidding. Well, that's really great. You want to go? Thank God, bye." They totally forgot I was in trouble. So at the end of the day, when they go do the announcements, they go, "The soccer field is being reseeded, so soccer practice will be on the football field, and the pep club meets in room 3A. And congratulations to one of our seniors who was published today." So that was my first appearance in print. So technically, I've been a professional writer for, oh God, yeah, I guess it's like, since that counts, half a century now. I have to show you a cover of this, since we're on podcast. I have a cover of the wait a minute.
Yeah.
He goes away here. Here we go. So this was a Rogue magazine. This is a cover I have as a collectible.
Oh,
so they're trying to be
nice.
like Playboy. Their mascot was a wolf. So he's lighting the girl cigarette out of the TV. So that was my introduction to the world of publishing. And then I was one of these kids, probably the first generation of kids that was making movies. So I made a movie in high school with all my friends, which was called Coldfinger, which was a parody of obviously Goldfinger. The plot, he wants to control all the ice in the world. I thought that was very clever. It wasn't quite Weird Al Yankovic, but it was called Coldfinger. But I won a national. I got second place or honorable mention at a national contest, and that convinced me that this is what I was going to do. And I ended up like going down that road, and finally I worked in local television in the Philadelphia area. I worked at like all different stations. One of my first jobs, I was a writer on a talk show that Muhammad Ali was going to be the host of, but his schedule got so busy, he only did the pilot. And this is before everybody had a camera in their pocket. I don't have a picture of me with Muhammad Ali. It's like, how did I miss that opportunity? So I worked in local television for a while, and I wrote for a lot of publications, ranging from, the underground newspaper in Philadelphia that was called The Distant Drummer. That was our equivalent to the Village Voice. I wrote for the New York Times. I wrote for a lot of magazines, but a really big year, I might make like $1,800, and that would be like from 12 different appearances. So I finally had when I went to school, at the end of my second year at college, one of my instructors said, "Listen, you should just go to Hollywood now. You you're ready. Like you don't usually get this, you know. And I was going to take his advice, but the Army intervened, and my number came up in the draft, so I was in the Army, and that sort of delayed my trip to Hollywood. So when I got out of the Army, I'm looking for a job, and I saw an ad. It says writers, producers, directors wanted. Now, normally an ad like that would be a scam, but a PBS station was opening up near me in Bucks County. It was in Trenton, New Jersey, and because they had federal funds, they had to advertise in local papers. So I went there, and I bring in all my print examples from magazines and things to apply for the job of a writer. I drive around the block. Where is it? You know, and the third time around the block, I realized this bowling alley is the studio, and they're putting a new sign up on top of the bowling alley sign. You can still see the bowling pin blinking and the bowling ball. So that was the temporary. So I go and they're ripping the whole place up. They left 2 alleys because they had a contract to do bowling for dollars at the studio, which I later directed. My first directing gig was Bowling for Dollars. So I go in. Who do I see here? And they say, you know, go around. He's hiring the general manager, and they had set up like a little cubicle with plywood, and you know, like to make a room. So I walk around, and there's a guy. He's got his stump up. He's missing a leg, and he's scratching his stump. Now this didn't throw me because I had been a medic in the Army. I'd seen my share of stumps. So he puts his he puts his leg back on. He puts his wooden leg on, and I show him my stuff. He says, "Wow, you're a real writer. Oh, Rogue Magazine. Yeah, I know that one. Well, you're a real writer." He said, "But you know, we just hired our last writer. I don't have that." So I'm said, "Listen, I'll be a secretary. I'll be a production assistant. But before I can say I'll do anything," he says, "well, we do have one opening for a writer producer. Would you take that?" I go, "Yeah." Like that was like a more higher paying job. It turned out this guy, it's the state of New Jersey, right? They get federal money to make a public broadcasting station. So, you know, this is 1972. So they go, who do we get to staff who do we get to hire all the creative people for a television station? Who do we have in the state of New Jersey that does related work to that? And he was in charge of picking the movies for the prison system. This is the guy who selected the movies they showed in all the prisons. That was his qualification to staff a television station. So I worked there for a year. It was pretty dull work. The writing was like not very exciting. And this is around the time that low budget movies were coming and breaking in. It was just happening. Independent movie things were beginning to happen. A few of them were breakout pictures. There was a movie called Joe, which was Susan Sarandon's first movie, which broke a lot of records and dealt with, like, you know, drugs and the blue collar resentment of yuppies and all that stuff. So let's do this, you know. So I had met enough creative people at the station, and I knew local actors and stuff. So I wrote and directed a movie that was like a Cheech and Chong movie before Cheech and Chong. This is before Cheech and Chong. So we were shooting this on weekends, like a lot of people were doing. And there was a fellow who worked at the station, was the one of the sound engineers, said, "Listen, you know, I know you get a much better deal when you rent the equipment on Friday because you can bring it back Monday. You really have 3 days." And my brother-in-law has a film rental house in Philadelphia. I can get you a really good rate rather than the other 2 big outfits. All right. So we're making this movie for a year on weekends, a little over a year. So I come into work one day, and the security guard at the desk says, "You're to go see the station manager first thing. Don't even go to your office." "What do you mean?" "Just go to the station manager." So I go to the station manager, and as I walk to the station manager's office, I see there's a security guard outside of my office. Like, you know, what the hell? I go to the station manager's office, and the sound engineer with the brother-in-law, with the film rental house, is sitting in a chair, tears running down his eyes, all the top managers in the room, and also the head of security for the TV station. I walk in, this guy looks at me, "Steve, I couldn't keep it quiet. I had to tell them everything." I tell, "What? Huh? What?" So it turns out there was no brother-in-law. When I said I'm making a movie, he decided to invent a brother-in-law. He went to some printer and like made up fake invoices. And then what he would do, because he worked at the station, he had a key to the equipment room. So Friday, this was like a PBS, so we sort of closed at kept normal hours. So when things end wrapped up like 6:30, 7 o'clock on Fridays, he would use his key to go to the equipment room, get the television stations, cameras, sound recorders, Niagaras, lights, load them on his van, and then say, I picked everything up from my brother-in-law to save time. So now they say that you were embezzling from the state of New Jersey and the federal government. I go, no, wait, I didn't know. He says, well, the only reason we're not going to prosecute you is it's too embarrassing. So anyway, I took this as a signal that I should finally take that trip to like Los Angeles. And I knew enough at the time from reading like you guys did. I used to read the Writer magazine and The Writer, and there weren't really that many cinema related ones, but I knew that my writing samples, even though they had been in some prestigious places, they were prose. That's not going to convince anybody I can write a screenplay. So I sat down and I wrote. I spent my first few months of unemployment writing 2 spec scripts. The 2 topics that kept me in high school an extra year, because I always had Robert Heinlein or Isaac Asimov or Raymond Chandler behind my algebra book. So I wrote kind of a Hitchcockian spy thriller and a sci-fi horror movie, body horror movie, with like a lot of death and mayhem. And I said, okay. I said to my, I kissed my wife and my baby got goodbye. And I said, I have an aunt and uncle in Los Angeles. I can sleep on the sofa bed. I guess I'll give myself 3 months. That 3 months, 90 days. I should be able to become a success in Hollywood. And then I'll give it up if I want. So some drunk driver, on Christmas Eve, I guess, or something. What holiday? It was a holiday week. I forget what it was. Kind of veered off the street and hit my car in the driveway and totaled it. So I said, okay, so we cashed that out. That paid for my ticket. I arrive in LA on Saturday. Sunday, I look in the newspaper and I figure, maybe I should look for a real job. It might take me a couple of weeks before I get hired in studio. So I see an ad that says, are you a good proofreader? I know all the proofreading things from the high school newspaper. Okay. Write that down. And the other one was telesales. I thought, well, like you guys, I have my radio voice. I can drop into telesales, so all right, I'll do that one too. And then I see an ad, contestants wanted for game shows. Are you good at crossword puzzles? Why not? So I go first thing Monday morning, I go to the interview for the proofreading. The guy hands me galleys. He says, all right, proofread this, and then I'll come back and check on you. And so I do it. I start looking around for him. He's in the break room flirting with the secretary. He says, here, I'm done. He said, you can't be done. I'm done. Most people take 30, 40 minutes. Like, well, all right, fine. He reads, he goes, holy cow, I've been here 13 years. You're the first guy that ever got 100% score. You sound like you're from the East Coast. What brings you here? I go, yada, yada, yada. Show, well, ha, ha, ha. All right, well, if you're not working for Warner Brothers, you can start here next Monday. Fill out these employment forms and bring them back. Now I go to the other appointment for the Illuminous, for the telemarketing. He says, what brings you? Sound like you're from the East Coast. Yeah. Oh, show business, huh? All right, well, if you're not working, here, but audition for me, read this. I go, your house is your most valuable investment. It's the equity we leave behind to your children. And aluminum siding, wow, you're great, fine. If you're not working for Warner Brothers, you start here Monday. Now I go to the audition for the game show, for the crossword puzzle. So there's like 150 people come to this audition. And the first thing they do is make everybody take a crossword puzzle test. It's like a middle school crossword puzzle. It's really easy, but still half the people are wiped out. So now the remaining people, they say, get up in front of the crowd and say a few words about yourself. This is to screen out anybody who would freeze in front of an audience, because game shows are taped in front of an audience. So now some people choke up there. So now the herd has been dropped down from 150. Now there's like 40 people left. And they say, tell us about yourself. So somebody gets up and says, hi, my name is Becky, and I was Miss Corn Queen at the Iowa State Fair. Hold it. How many people here are here from out of town and came to Hollywood to be? So like everybody raised their hand. Look, this show broadcasts all over the country, kind of annoys people in mainstream America. Everybody's in show business. So tell us your last real job. So I had been working during my unemployment period when I was writing the spec scripts as a substitute teacher. So I said, I'm an English teacher from Philadelphia. Fine. So now I have one more stop to make. I had left out that the film I made, the Cheech and Chong type movie, I entered it in a film festival where it got a lot of attention. It won a special jury prize at the Atlanta International Film Festival, and I had the misfortune of signing with a distributor who went bankrupt the week the movie came out. So the movie was like in 5 theaters. But nonetheless, I met people at the film festival, and one of them was a producer of Charlie's Angels, big hit TV show. He says, "Look me up if you ever get there." So now I go to see him, and it turns out that the show is canceled. His wife divorced him, and he's living like in a ratty apartment. He says, "Look, I can't help you, but let me connect you to my agent." So now I go. So now I'm a winner of the crossword puzzle. They say, "All right, you people here are going to pretend to do crossword puzzles against each other the rest of the week, and Thursdays we tape our show, and the best people will be on the show." So I quickly realized right away I'm one of the best people. There's a young girl, her name was Victoria Stevens, and we're like laughing at the other people and stuff. I drop off the scripts at the agent, the friend of Charlie's Angels. I spend 2 days doing the rehearsals for the game show. I come back to my aunt's house, and there's a package for me. I open it up. It's my 2 scripts that I dropped off, 2 days before. They've been gone 2 days. They look like they've been gone 2 months. They're battered. They're torn. There's a coffee ring on one of them. There's a note. "Sorry, too busy to read these right now. Dictated but not read." The ultimate insult. Dictated but not read. Yeah. So my aunt is sympathetic. She says, "One of my girlfriends works at CBS. Maybe there's some, writing jobs there. Her boss does all these game shows there, not the game show I was on." So I go there, and she says, "Look, your aunt should have called me before you sent me over. We're not hiring anybody to write the game show questions, but there was a young lawyer that worked for my boss. I heard he became an agent. I have his contact number." She calls him up. "I'm with this friend of the family. Yes, he's made films. He's been published in the New York Times." He says, "Come right over." So I go over there. This guy's literally moving into his office, into his desk. He's got a carton of his personal belongings. He says, "Will you do television?" "Well, what do you mean?" "Well, some people only do the theater or only do motion pictures." I don't know. "I'll do anything." "All right, I'll read this." So now I go. Now I go to finally. I would eliminate all the cut. They tell me, "You're going to be on the show." They have the 10 best people to tape a week's worth of the show. To my dismay, they put me opposite Victoria Stevens, my friend, who was joining me, mocking everyone. And I took her name as an omen. Victoria Stevens, get it? Victory. I'm going to crush her. I feel terrible. I had help. Betty White was my partner, my celebrity partner, the late great Betty White. Years later, she pretended she remembered it. But now remember, I came on a Saturday. This is Thursday. I go on the show. I win a car, a color TV, and a stereo. That's a good start. Okay. So this is before cell phones. At the end of the taping, it was a long day of taping, a week's worth of shows. We all go out to a restaurant. We're drinking. I roll back around 1 o'clock in the morning. And my aunt is waking up for me, and I'm going like I'm in high school. What's up? He said, "This guy said call him no matter how late." I call him back. It's the agent. He says, "I read your stuff. There's no doubt you can do this." And I got it right over to another client of mine who has already read it, and he wants to meet you tomorrow, first thing. No, he's going to send you a package first thing in the morning, and he wants you to look at it, and then he wants you to meet you at 1 o'clock. Well, this is great. I'd love to get some advice from a professional Hollywood screenwriter. No, you don't understand. This agency represents writers, directors, actors, and he is a producer. He's one of the producers of the $6 Million Man TV show. And they have a very hard time finding writers to write that show because it's half police procedure, catching bad guys, and half sci-fi. And the people who are coming off of police procedural shows, they don't get the sci-fi. And the people that come off the sci-fi don't get the police procedural shows. But you have these 2 samples, one of each. It shows you get it. So they sent you a pilot script that they just finished to read, which was like an Invisible Man kind of gimmick, and go see them tomorrow. So I go over there, and it's like it's like America's Got Talent. The people that were there was this fellow, the client, Alan Balter, was a producer. Leslie Stevens, who had produced The Outer Limits, the sci-fi guy, and Harv Bennett, who later on was famous for doing the Star Trek motion pictures. They say, "All right, tell us. You read the thing about the Invisible Man. What ideas would you have for an episode of our Invisible Man show. And the gimmick on this Invisible Man show was called Gemini Man, is he had a watch that would turn him invisible, but if he used it for more than 10 minutes a day, he would die. If he was invisible more than 10 minutes. So that's that way it would be like, this is the year of the Incredible Hulk. They want to have so they have, every 15 minutes there'd be a special effect gag, right, where he would use it. So give us some ideas. So I said, okay, the old saying, steal from the best. We all know Alfred Hitchcock. The Alfred Hitchcock movie, Strangers on a Train. Okay, there's spies on the train, and they're not Nazis because it was always commies. In this 1970s, the bad guys were always commies. All right, so the commies are they're doing something sneaking, something with spies, something whatever. I don't know. Oh, I know the girls Olympic team. Yeah, that's a wet dream for the Invisible Man. He has to go undercover with the girl. He's spying on them. All right, so girls Olympic team, and they want to blow up the train with the girls Olympic team. I don't know why. The girls Olympic swim team, and he's fighting the bad guys. It's nighttime, and one of them comes behind him, hits him over the head with a wrench. He falls unconscious on the railroad tracks, and the watch button hits the track. He turns invisible, and the conductor says, "All aboard," and the train starts to go towards him, invisible on the tracks. Commercial. So now my panel of America's Got Talent, they go, so I don't know, is that good or bad? They're muttering. All right, give us another one. Okay, Hitchcock again. Notorious, where Cary Grant sends Ingrid Bergman undercover into this house of Nazi spies, and you think Claude Rains is the leader of the Nazi spy ring, but he's really a mama's boy. His mother's really the leader of the spy ring. We do the same thing, only of course, there's commies, not Nazis. And our hero doesn't need Ingrid Bergman because he's invisible. So he's inside the room. He's listening to commies plan all their conspiracy stuff. And all of a sudden, the mother turns to him and says, "Can I get you a beverage?" Because she's blind and she thinks he's one of the other commies in the room. So at this point, Harv Bennett jumps up, comes around the table. He grabs me and kisses me on the cheek and says, finally, somebody who gets it, that these shows are not about the superpowers. They're about the vulnerabilities. The way you write these kind of shows is you reverse engineer them, and you got to find a way to have the superpowered person have a problem and work around that. And they go, "This is great. Listen, we've all read your sample script, and go see Agnes about parking." And I go, "No, I don't need to be validated. My cousin dropped me off. I'm going to call her. She'll pick me up." And they go, No, not to get valid for your assigned parking here at Universal. You're starting here at Universal Pictures Monday. You're on staff. And the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your 2-hour horror, science fiction, body horror, body count movie and homogenize it into a 2-hour episode of The $6 Million Man. So that was my big compromise. I had to water down my alien-esque script into something appropriate for the young audience. And that was, and apparently I've been working ever since.
Yeah, I mean, that tells you the beginning of the luck that you've had for those decades in the business, without a doubt. So I actually want to jump to the first major movie that you worked on, and that was 48 Hours. So you were one of many co-writers on that picture, and I know it went through a lot of iterations before Nick Nolte and Eddie Murphy came together. Tell us what your contributions were to that, and also, I know I've heard stories about how they almost fired Eddie after the first few days. They weren't confident about him. What was the moment when Paramount got behind him and realized they may have had a hit on their hands?
Well, I don't know the exact moment because I was not in the screening room. We looked at dailies, but I think what happened was that knowing that there was in other words, the shooting schedule of a movie is based on efficiency, right? So it may very well have been that the shooting schedule was not showing Eddie's best stuff, just the way it worked out. Maybe they were doing the running and gunning or whatever. So at a certain point when I think they heard that there was some concern about his performance, they assembled some footage. Even though you wait till the movie's done before you're putting it together, they quickly assembled some footage, and that brought everybody around. The picture had been around. The script, Larry Gordon, who I worked with many times since then, he develops. He's relentless. So a lot of people will jump on a lot of horses and ride in different directions, but he's very dogged, and he'll he'll keep something moving. So that script had been in development for at least 10 or 12 years or longer. The original conception, it was going to be the middle-aged cop was going to be Robert Mitchum, and the young convict that was going to be Clint Eastwood. That's how long the script had been kicking around. And a lot of people took cracks at it. Roger Spottiswoode finally did the script that they thought was moving towards production, and Walter Hill was hired to direct it. And Walter Hill did a rewrite. And then at this time, I had worked my way up the food chain at Universal Studios from this for the $6 Million Man. I worked on the Hardy Boys. I finally worked. If you're a competent writer in Hollywood, you end in television, you become a producer, because the television producers end up doing a lot of writing, and there's a writing staff, and the executive producer is rewriting everybody. So I'd worked my way up from story editor up to producer and showrunner of Knight Rider. So my contract was up, and in that little room where I was renegotiating with Universal, Paramount said, "Come over here. We like what you're doing, and if you come over here, we'll get you in the movie business." So I went over to Paramount, and I did 2 pilots for them that both got ordered. One was for a show called The Powers of Matthew Starr, which was like Smallville before Smallville, and the other was called The Renegades, which was like 21 Jump Street before 21 Jump Street. Patrick Swayze is one of his first jobs. He was one of the leads. So by this time, Paramount knew me as somebody who could work really fast under the gun, because the Patrick Swayze pilot got started off as like a train wreck, and I was literally writing in front of the cameras every day. And the actor would come up to me and say, "How come I don't like this guy?" And I say, "I'll figure it out later, because we're shooting the movie out of order, but trust me." So they decided I was the guy, now that they weren't going to get Eddie Murphy, that I was the guy that could add humor to the script, because Walter Hill's a great director, but if you know his work, it's not particularly humorous. So Walter was not happy that a mere television writer was rewriting him, and he was very vocal about it. And I go, "Maybe this is not working out." And they go, "Look, you have a contract with us. You work for us. Do it." So on the set, I've been told that it was like a constant battle. Joel Silver was always insisting that Walter shoot everything that was funny. Walter was constantly trying to take it out. And at one point he said that it was when we had one of the meetings in one of the executives' office, they had a poster for Stir Crazy, which is the movie where they're in prison and they're in chicken suits. And he says, "I'm not making this movie." And they go, "No, Walter, we're not trying to make it into that." So what I did was, I think Eddie did not ad lib in the movie. There was a lot of people in mystery that was ad libbing, but it was all written. So a lot of the funny was in the movie, and a lot of the things I did was just trying to flip it. Because I would say to Walter, I would say, "Isn't this kind of a cliche?" He'd say, "When I do it, it's not a cliche, it's an archetype." And I go, "Well, nonetheless, I think the money being in a safe deposit box has been done 1,000,000 times. Why don't we freshen that up?" And I told him an anecdote that happened to me, where a friend of mine said, from Australia, said, "Will you pick up my car in long-term storage and meet me at the airport?" And that whole scene where he goes to long-term storage, the elevators and stuff, that happened to me. What I left out was it was a right-hand drive Triumph. And I'm driving down the road, like, you drive down the road, you say, I want to be to the right, just to the side of the dividing line. But this was a right-hand drive, so I'm driving down the middle of the street, and cars are like, "You asshole, go back to England," So I left it. But anyway, I said, so that was that. And and the bar in the original, in Walter's script, it was a tough bar, and it was a mostly black clientele, which is why Eddie said, "I can talk to the brothers, you can't." And I said, "Where's the challenge in that? It should be like a complete redneck bar." And like, and Larry Gordon, who grew up in Mississippi, he said, "Oh yeah, Confederate flag on the wall and everything." And Walter said, "In San Francisco, a bar where they're all wearing cowboy clothes in San Francisco would be a gay bar." And I look, "Walter, like, we all know that. We live in California, but the audience doesn't know that." So I think whenever the movie takes kind of a left-hand turn from what you would expect in a straight-ahead movie, it was for me. And but it was one of these situations where, as often happens when a director is one of the writers, like, he sucks up all the oxygen in the room. And I got, very little street cred coming off that movie. I was waiting for the phone to ring, and, I figure, like, somebody's going to offer me another movie. And it didn't really happen for, I don't know, about 18 months. And then finally, Joel Silver, who'd been one of the producers of this movie, was doing Commando. That opportunity came up. And in fact, when he met with me, he said, I went back and went in the filing cabinet and I was looking at all the drafts of 48 Hours. And man, everything everybody remembers is the stuff that you brought. And I think we have the same situation here of trying to bring humor to this, like not in a different manner, to this kind of larger than life character. So what had happened was on very short notice, there had been new management at 20th Century Fox. Barry Diller came in, and like his first day at work, he says to Larry Gordon, who was a prominent producer on the lot, "Listen, I met Arnold Schwarzenegger at a party, and he was funny and charming, nothing like the Terminator or Conan, which is the two movies he was known for. He'd been in a couple of other movies that like nobody even noticed prior to that. So this is what he was known for. So if you can make a movie with that costs $10 million with Arnold, I will greenlight it immediately. We need to get movies going." So Larry Gordon, Joel, they went in the filing cabinet and they found like 4 screenplays that were very action oriented with a male lead. But they said one of these should be a starting point rather than starting from scratch for Arnold. So everybody agreed that the script called Commando was the one to go with. We had some problems with that. First off, his wife and child are kidnapped, but they're not kidnapped till page 50. The first 50 pages, the bad guys make several overtures to him about how they want him to do the mission for them. And he says, "Sorry, not interested, I'm retired." But Arnold would turn the table over. He would not, the minute they came, right? The biggest problem was kind of a stretch. Arnold, the character is supposed to be an Israeli ex-Mossad agent. So probably Arnold trying to break out of the Conan Terminator mode, probably playing a Jewish character was maybe too much, kind of a bit of a stretch, especially with that accent. So I come in on Monday and to work, and everybody agrees the Commando script is it. And they say, "Okay, Steve, you guys have an appointment. You and Joel and the director have an appointment with Arnold at 1 o'clock." I go, wait. I just read this thing over the week. He says, "Well, just do what you do because in television, you go in, all right, like you got 3 hours. You'll think of something." He said, "We can't get. What are you talking? We can't give him the script. Give him a script. He's playing a Jew. Well, come on, we can't give him the script. You got to go in and pitch. You got to pitch the movie you're going to write, not what we have." So, like, I'm spending the next couple of hours like scribbling notes. We go over to Arnold's office, and I pitch him the movie at pretty much as it is. Greatly differing greatly from the original. One of the examples, the original script was obviously written by people who were not from California, because when he needs weapons at a point, the character did what Reese did in Terminator. He goes to the supermarket and he buys the ingredients to make weapons. I said, "This is friggin' California. You can just go to the Army Navy store." And, now since then it's gotten tougher in California. But so anyway, I tell Arnold, I act the movie out. At one point, I accidentally slip into my Arnold impersonation. And then I say, and then Arnold, you say, "Remember, Sully, when I said I would kill you last? I lied." So he gives me a look and I go, "Arnold, I'm sorry. I do all the greats. You want to hear my Cary Grant?" I know. All right. So anyway, at the end of this pitch, Arnold says, "I like this picture. I'm not a robot from the future or a caveman from the past. I'm very close, like a regular person. It's a part John Wayne could play. I do this picture." All right. So now we drive back to 20th Century Fox from his office in Venice. And this is an early primitive, like car phone. At that time, the car phone was the same as what you have on a boat. To make a phone call, you would get the San Pedro Marine operator. So I'm going to call the studio. Joel calls the phone. They go, "San Pedro Marine operator, what is your emergency?" "No, we're not sinking. We want a landline. Connect us to." So we call Fox, and Larry says, "I'll be ready when you get back." And I go, "What does that mean?" I go back there. They have the head of production, physical production in the room, and a stenographer. And they say, "Tell us what you told Arnold, but break it down like we break down an episode of a TV show," which to me means I go, "Okay, the opening scene is several mysterious whackings. Could be practical location, could be back lot. 4 pages. We whack 3 people. Then we have the title sequence, Arnold with his daughter, the petting zoo, teaching her to swim, showing her karate, whatever, 3-page title sequence. Then the helicopter lands at General Kirby. So I'm guesstimating how many pages of movie script each thing goes. When I finish the whole story, Larry Gordon says to the stenographer, how many pages is that? She goes, 105 pages. Fine, Steve, start writing. If you change any of those sets, tell us, because we're going to start building the sets right now.
Mhm.
What? This is crazy. But part of the reason was it was a low budget movie, $10 million. The other reason, a writer's strike was imminent, and they knew all writing would have to stop. And as it turned out, the day the writing had to stop, all scripts had to be delivered to the Writers Guild by 5 o'clock, so that there was no non-union writing going on in town. Okay, so I said, listen, let me finish it at home. There's fewer interruptions, so I'll finish it at home, send a messenger to pick up the script from my house to go to the Writers Guild in Beverly Hills. So I finally finished the script, the messenger's there, and I go to print the script, and I realize, oh hell, it's 1984, and the printer is going.
Yeah.
So like I time the first page. I go, okay, the script has to leave here at 4:30 to get to Beverly Hills at 5 o'clock, and at this rate, I'll be done printing at 8 o'clock. So now I'm in a panic. I don't know what to do, So finally I have a brainstorm. I call the Writers Guild, and I said, listen, can I register a script electronically? This is the early days of bulletin boards. This is before the internet. I mean, the internet was around, but it wasn't like we have now, like social media. And they have no idea what I'm talking about at the strike office. What? Huh? Electronic. Give me accounting. So I get some money in accounting. I said, isn't it true that electronic file has a date and time on it? Yeah, right. All right, get somebody from legal. So I get somebody from the strike department, and somebody from legal, and somebody from accounting. So they explain to the people in charge of registering strike scripts that an electronic file has a date and time. So they let me send in a floppy. So I was the first person to ever register anything at the Writers Guild electronically. I sent over a 5 1/4 inch floppy, and it got there at 5 minutes of 5. But to show you how like insane this was, you guys have made student films and student products and things like that. Movie started. I get a phone call from Joel Silver. He says, listen, can we film a couple of scenes at your house? I go, say what? Isn't this like a real motion picture? He says, listen, I've been to your house, and this opening scene where the garbage men whack a guy, the only way that works is if the garbage truck makes a quick getaway. You can't do a K-turn. And I remember your house is the end of a cul-de-sac, and you have a long driveway. And I go, that was my inspiration for the guy realizing he forgot to put the garbage out, busting his ass running down the driveway only to get killed. You draw from your own life. Well, we want to film that at your house. And I also remember you have a real tropical backyard. We want to do the Vietnam flashback in your backyard. Now you're saying, what was the Vietnam flashback? At one point in the story, when Arnold was wondering about why all those guys were getting killed, he was looking at photographs, and we did kind of a Ken Burns thing in the script where it was like black and white, but it just moved a little bit. But after we shot that at my house, they changed the actor playing Bennett. So the sequence was not usable. So I have a photograph somewhere. If you have a website, I'll provide it for you, of me and Arnold, and my dad was there visiting that day. We're all in jungle outfits, like behind my house. So I ended up having my house being in the movie, like it's a student film. And so that was the picture came out on time. It was a great success for Arnold. And then I rolled right into, I think, The Running Man, because I had a relationship with Arnold. I did that. And then I did Die Hard for these guys, the same producers. And I've lost count of how many movies I wrote for Larry and Joel. And what was funny that I was sort of like in a pigeonholed as this science fiction writer because of bionic shows and stuff like that. But then these sort of crime related movies took me into opened another arena. And then I went back into the science fiction with several other pictures. So I'd say most of my work has been in those two genres, science fiction, crime. But I view all these things as thrillers. I think that's the construction. I've also got back to my original fantasy, my original dream, where I thought I was going to be working for Disney and doing comic books, because I subsequently did a number of animated projects. I've been doing a lot of comic books lately. So I managed to basically spend my adult life doing what I spent my childhood ingesting. I'm now returning the favor and warping the minds of the generations that followed me.
Nice.
I would say obviously you're a journeyman writer, screenwriter, but mostly writer. Would you say that in I guess your resume or just in general that you have a specific signature to what you write or subjects you write?
That's a really good question, and the best way to sum it up is I had a friend who was an instructor at American Film Institute. I've also done a lot of guest lectures at American Film Institute and USC and UCLA, and I've done some around the world and stuff. He says, listen, I want you to come on Tuesday to my class. One of my students is doing his thesis on the films of Steven Souza. I go, what? He says, yeah, you might find it interesting because I've seen, he shows me the work in progress before he finishes. It's kind of like an audiovisual demonstration, but sit way in the back because you might like rattle him and he sees you're there. So I go there, he starts out, he says, Steven D'Souza, misdirected expectations. I go, what's this? So he basically says, analyzing Mr. Souza's work, I see what he does is he convinces the audience that something is going to happen and then doesn't do it, but does something better, flips it. So I'm listening and go, so I start taking notes. Holy hell, yeah, I do that. Wait a minute, let me go. So I would say that would apply is to misdirected expectations. And also another thing you talked about was writing himself into a corner, putting the hero in a corner, which was like what Harv Bennett said to me that first day, getting the hero in trouble and reverse engineering it. So those are two things that I think I do a lot. So a good example would be in Die Hard 2, the villains lock Bruce Willis into the cockpit of a plane. Remember he comes up out of the runway to intercept the Noriega type character, and they lock him. Now, first they lock him into the plane. Now, the first thing that's wrong is that a cockpit door does not lock from the outside because then you can unlock it from the outside, right? But the audience doesn't. It's keeping notes. So they lock the door with a fire axe, right, from the outside. And now Bruce is inside, and the bad guy says, "How many grenades do we have?" And they say 2 each, and says, "Use them all." And they throw all the grenades through the glass of the cockpit. And Bruce is in there in the plane with all these grenades. He's locked in the cockpit. So this is like getting the guy in an impossible situation. How do you get out? But this is where not just the writing, but the other crafts of the movie come into play. So the reason that sequence works so well, because it is, some of it is production design. The interior of this military plane is all green, gray, subdued. It wasn't a real plane. We designed it that way. There were only two things that were red in the entire scene. One was the tip of the fire axe. That blocked him in the cockpit. And the other, which you don't really notice, is the handle of the ejection seat. And every shot, if you look at the movie again, every shot in the cockpit, when Bruce is like trapped and the bad guys and he's trying to get out, the handle is in the shot somewhere, just out of focus, a little bit of red. And the audience, you're unconsciously registering that red. And then finally, when he realizes he's going to die, he sees the handle. And what happens is, the reason it works so well is the audience subconsciously registered that handle. They don't realize it, but they noticed it. And so they think, oh my God, that's what I would do. And that's why when he pulls the handle and shoots through the roof, everybody goes insane. The audience goes insane because, yeah, I was thinking of that too. So you know what it's like? The moment that I try to get through in a movie is that moment of recognition where you were just on the cusp of figuring it out yourself. I compare it to when a band does a tour, like when Steely Dan does their 15th farewell tour. You know, I know we did one last year, but they play the first few notes of one of their songs. The audience starts applauding. They're applauding themselves for recognizing the song in 3 notes. That's what it really is. So I think that's a lot of what I do. And again, misdirecting to you what's going to happen. So you think one thing's going to happen, and something even better happens. But it's along the lines of what you were thinking, so you feel rewarded.
Okay.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that, especially in the Die Hard movies. And that actually brings me to my next question, going back to the original now. It's been well documented. I mean, there's so much that's been said about Die Hard that has already been said. But one thing I've always wanted to know was how did Bruce Willis get cast as John McClane? Because I know they had like everybody in town up for that part, and he was like probably the last guy they considered. Like, what made them decide this guy could carry a big action picture like that?
Well, what happened there was one of the situations where once the studio decided they were making the movie, they put it on their release date. It was going to be coming out I can't remember, it came out in the summer, I think. I'm not sure.
Yeah, summer of '88.
All right. So they have the movie and like they have it booked, it's scheduled. They've got to start the movie on a certain date. It was going to be out that time. So the starting date is getting closer. So what happened here is you have to look at perspective. This movie is going out. It's 1988. It's going out to actors. And this is at this time now in the 80s, we had all these action movies with these, roided up muscular stars. And I contribute to that with Arnold with several movies. And you had Stallone and you had Chuck Norris. And action movies were considered kind of like B movies. I mean, it used to be A and B back in the golden age of Hollywood was the budget of a movie, but it had come into people's minds that A and B meant quality and not so much quality, which it does not. It was budget. But action movies did not get a lot of respect. And so when you sent the script out, you're coming out in the wake of, like, let's say Rambo. We've all seen Rambo. In Rambo, still was commies. We're still doing commies then. I had nothing to do with Rambo. But in Rambo, the commies grab Rambo. They strap him to a mattress. They pulled all the ticking off the mattress, so it's just springs. And then they put electrodes on his gonads. And say, "You will talk, Yankee. You will tell us where is," and they're torturing him, right? And finally, he breaks loose. He kills everybody in the room. Then he grabs the microphone and says, "Hey, you commies at the other end of this call, I'm coming for you next." This is the way a hero's supposed to behave, right? Mm-hmm. And now you send this to all these actors, and Bruce spends, in if you want to be in analysis, not psychological analysis, but and analyzing the screenplay, Bruce spends the hero Mclean spends the first act hiding and trying to call for help. This is the antithesis of what all the action movie stars are doing at the time. So everybody they sent this to said, "This guy's a pussy. What the hell?" And because they're comparing it to all the other action movies, right? Plus his wife's making more money than he is. Like, he's whining about the relationship. It was like everything, all these things that made him an everyman, that made the movie work. He's an ordinary every guy you can relate to. When he goes to the airport, the guy says, "This is my first time driving a limousine. It's my first time being in one." And he sits up front. All these things were to make him a relatable, ordinary guy, but that's not what the actors wanted to play. They had all been brainwashed. You have to be this roid rage, kill everything and move. And like the typical, you're in trouble in an action movie when they have a random crime, when the hero goes into Starbucks and there happens to be a robbery. Now, Clint Eastwood did that in Dirty Harry. Yeah. That was the original version of that. And, that would establish his character as not being a badass, just saying, "Do you feel lucky, punk?" We just established him. But that's been done to death. If you have to introduce this like arbitrary thing to show the guy's rough up front, like maybe your picture needs a reexamination. So this was such a turn from what people were expecting that they gave it to all the wrong people. Schwarzenegger passed. Stallone passed. Because Larry Gordon had a long relationship with Burt Reynolds, he gave it to Burt Reynolds. Burt Reynolds passed. Richard Gere passed. Jimmy Caan was a friend of mine. For years, he said, "What the hell was I thinking?" I passed on that. So they just basically ran out of people, is what happened. And now they've got to cast somebody. We have to cast somebody by Friday, or we have to push the movie, and the movie won't be out in July. It came down to that. And so when they went to Bruce Willis, plus they had him on the lot, the 20th Century Fox says, "Well, we have a lot invested in him in the TV show. We're building him as a star. Let's at least capitalize on that." have somebody we have a contract with already, but of course the contract is not for movies, it's for TV. So Bruce Willis's agents and managers, they said, let's just shoot the moon. And they asked for $5 million for him because they knew that everybody in town had turned it down. They knew the movie had to start like in a matter of weeks. And they figured they were in a great negotiating position, which they were. So that's how it came to Bruce. And the next day, Richard Dreyfuss called up his agent and said, I don't get $5 million. I have an Academy Award and you're fired. I mean, literally the next day, like a dozen agents got fired. And then, wait a minute, you told me you didn't want to do it. Well, you should have talked me out of it. You should have talked me into it. And of course, that escalated everybody's prices in Hollywood at that time. You know, everybody, it became what do you call it? Not what a war. What do you? You'll cut out all these boring parts. What do you call it when you have like Russia and America? They call it not a crime wave. You know, it's basically a dick measuring contest. I don't know what it was.
Oh yeah.
This, I can't think of it. I'm going blank. Let's change the topic here. You see, I did this for you. You see my mug here.
Nice. I gotta get the T-shirt, by the way. I don't have that yet.
Okay.
So another question I have for you is, you're kind of the first guy to do universe building in cinema with the whole Valverde connection with Commando and Die Hard 2. You had Mclean, the Gail Wallens character in Die Hard, and Ricochet, which you co-wrote. Was any of that intentional, or was it just like fun stuff?
It was just an inside joke. It actually takes me back to the $6 Million Bionic days. We used to make up fake countries all the time because we always had these international spy stories, you know. So if you said so on $6 Million Man, you say Steve, the ambassador to the UN from Venezuela, is actually a commie spy. Like we get sued. So we used to make up fake countries all the time. So I made up this country, Valverde, for I think an episode of the $6 Million Man, but I ended up recycling it for Commando, and then Joel used it again for, it's in debate, but it was actually used again for Predator, and then we did the Gail Wallens thing, and then I did it on a TV show, and I've been doing it for 20 years in a comic book now. So it started out as an inside joke, but now it became a thing, and somebody wrote something on the internet. The Valverde verse it competes with the MCU and the DC universe, and someone even made a bunch of shorts like about a guys on a mission to Valverde, and like they all get killed immediately. You know, so it's called. And there's even T-shirts now. I should have copyrighted. You can actually get a T-shirt, Viva Valverde.
Yeah.